Good afternoon, bon après-midi. C'est avec un sentiment de gratitude que je m'apprête à faire la deuxième lecture en chambre de mon projet de loi très important qui vise à modifier le code criminel et la loi sur les juges. The first part of Bill C-233, known as Keira's Law, will allow judges to receive educational training on intimate partner violence and coercive control so the most vulnerable will be better protected. The second aspect of the bill is to officially introduce to the criminal code electronic monitoring control in some cases at the judicial interim release phase, which is under section 515 of the criminal code. Je tiens à remercier mes collègues députés Pam Damoff de Oakville-North Burlington et Yara Sachs de York Center, ainsi que Dr. Jennifer Kegan et son conjoint, Maître Philip Viater, pour leur implication dans ce projet. Une femme est tuée chaque 2 jours et demi au Canada. Ça donne froid dans le dos. Un grand nombre de ces victimes ont été assassinées par un conjoint intime ou un autre membre de la famille. Dans bon nombre des cas, il y avait plusieurs signaux d'alarme avant ces crimes. Violation d'interdiction ordonnée par un tribunal, un comportement harcelant et violent à l'encontre de la victime et plusieurs autres. Il faut être en mesure de mieux détecter ces éléments et de mieux protéger les personnes qui sont à risque de subir ces infractions. D'où l'importance de la formation continue sous la forme de colloques sur la violence conjugale et le système de surveillance électronique de certains individus. This bill will better protect women against intimate partner violence. It is our duty to protect vulnerable Canadians and allow them to feel safer in their very own homes. I strongly believe that Bill C-233 is vital because it can save lives. I will now turn it over to Jennifer and Philip. Thank you.
Thank you. We are here today to speak about Keira's Law. We are here today to speak about Keira's Law, Bill C-233, which will allow judges to become educated on matters of domestic violence and coercive control. For those who do not know our story, my daughter and Philip's stepdaughter, Keira Kagan, was killed by her biological father in a murder-suicide in February of 2020. I had been a victim of domestic violence and coercive control, and while I was safely able to flee from that relationship, I sought protection for a very young Keira in the family courts. As I started to recount the abuse I experienced at the hands of my ex-husband, the judge stopped me and said that it is not relevant to parenting and he is going to ignore it. Keira was put into unsafe contact with an extremely dangerous individual, and the result, she was killed at the tender age of 4 years old. She did not deserve this violent and premature end to life. Keira's Law is named in her honor. We are here today on behalf of innocent Canadian children who are voiceless. Children like our daughter Keira, who are often simply court file numbers to judges, but whose very lives depend on judges to protect them from violence and harm. We are here today because Keira was failed by a court system which is systemically uninformed about domestic violence and did not put child safety at the forefront. Judges across Canada are failing victims of violence and children. Many judges use outdated stereotypes and fail to recognize what domestic violence looks like in the modern world. Anything short of physical violence with visible injuries is not given the proper attention it deserves. Worse still is that even with the physical injuries, the child is still often put into unsupervised contact with a violent parent. This is simply unacceptable. Currently, there seems to be very little differentiation between how a court treats a case of domestic violence versus how they treat a case of two people who legitimately don't agree. Words like high conflict are too often used to obscure abuse, and the result is that perpetrators are not held to account. Children deserve better, and victims deserve better. Our daughter Keira deserved to be safe, but instead of turning 7 like her friends and classmates, she will be forever frozen at 4, And the worst part for us is that the tools to keep her safe were readily available, but just not implemented. We do not want to see this preventable tragedy happen to another Canadian child or family. 30 to 40 Canadian children are killed by a violent parent each year. Many are failed by the very systems that are supposed to protect them. When children experience domestic violence, it may result in a host of mental and physical health consequences. The Canadian Medical Association has advised me that they support Bill C-233, Keira's Law. Domestic violence and its consequences are a public health emergency. Advocates have been calling for judicial education on domestic violence for years. If proper training had been implemented earlier, it would have made considerable difference for Keira. We need to help the next little Keira down the line. I hope that if any child or youth is watching today, they know that change is coming and that the Canadian people care about protecting you from violence and harm. We are here to bring about change. Philip and I want to thank the wonderful MPs who have brought this bill forward, MP Dhillon, MP Damoff, and MP Sachs. To all the other MPs who support Keira's Law, we thank you as well for understanding the problem and taking the necessary steps to bring about change. Keira Kagan wanted to change the world, and thanks to these 3 MPs and the Canadian people, she will. This is an extremely important bill that will save lives, and we strongly urge all members of Parliament to vote in favor of this bill when the time comes. I thank you.
In November 2020, I'm Pam Damoff, the MP for Oakville North Burlington. In November 2020, I got a direct message on Twitter, and it said, "My name is Jennifer Kagan, and I'm the mom of Keira, a little girl who was found dead at Rattlesnake Point on February the 9th, 2020. Jennifer isn't from my riding, but I recall well the news of Keira's death when it happened. We set up a phone call, and since that time, I've had the privilege of working with Jennifer and her husband Philip to ensure that Keira's legacy is one that ensures judges receive training on domestic violence and coercive control. We're here today because of a mother's tireless advocacy. Bill C-233, or Keira's Law, will not only ensure judges receive additional training on an issue that has historically been ignored, but it has sparked a conversation across Canada. In fact, a movement has begun in Keira's memory. This bill has received support from advocates and women's shelters across the country and from MPs of all political stripes. Burlington Mayor Mary Ann Mead Ward ensured that the City of Burlington unanimously passed a motion to support Keira's Law, and now more and more municipalities are following suit. I've told Jennifer many times that Keira is our angel who is changing the world. Today, the sun was shining brighter than it has for weeks, and I honestly believe that that is Keira shining her light on all of us. Our Justice Minister, David Lametti, and his team deserve thanks for their empathetic work on this issue. And I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to my dear friend, Anju Dhillon, who embraced Keira's story and included Keira's Law in her private member's bill. We would not be here today had Anju not done that. And I will now turn it over to my good friend, Yara Sachs, who has been tireless in her support. Yara?
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is such an important day because of the tireless work of, first of all, to Jennifer and to Phil. You've worked so hard to raise Keira's voice throughout this country. Shortly after I was elected in October 2020, one of the members of my riding, a woman who's also an advocate for women who are vulnerable and at risk, came to me with your story and said, "Yara, if there's anything that you do as a newly elected MP, please help Jennifer." Jennifer, I'm keeping that promise to Keira and to you today with the help of Pam and with Anju. Thank you. Why is this so important? Coercive control is one of the key factors in intimate partner violence that is so common yet grossly unrecognized within our society and within our judicial system. The difference of recognizing it, knowing it, and exercising the tools that we have available can be the difference between life and death for a woman or her child. And that is why we're here today. We know that throughout COVID-19, there's been an alarming rise in domestic partner violence. We know that women are suffering in silence, but they're also suffering in silence in our court systems, in our family courts, and in other parts of the judicial process. Today, we are here to say clearly and resolutely that education of our judicial system is the first step in prevention and in the saving of lives. For that, I have to thank Anju for giving space for Pam, myself, and for Keira on this important day. And we know how many of our members in this House and across this country are supporting C233. We're in lockstep with countries like Australia and the United Kingdom, who are doing their own work in their committees and legislative systems to explore the importance and the value of understanding coercive control in their own domestic violence systems and how to address it. We need to know the warning signs if we are to protect each other, our women, and our children. It starts today. I want to thank every single advocate who has come to myself, to Anju, to Pam, within our communities amongst our stakeholders, to raise Keira's voice and the voice of women and children across this country. There is more work to do, and we will get it done. As we move into the House today to prepare for the next steps of this legislation, I want each and every woman across this country to know that we are here for you, we have heard you, and we will continue to do this work. Thank you to all of my colleagues. Thank you to Jennifer and Phil, and we'll see the work continue. Thank you so much.
I will now take questions. First question online. Mia Robson, the Canadian Press. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm not sure who will answer this question, but I'm wondering if you just give me an update on the status of the bill in terms of, I believe it's at second reading, but where sort of it stands, what the odds are that it will pass. But also, it took 4 years and I think 3 different bills to get a similar training for judges on sexual assault. And I'm just wondering how worried you are that A, that could happen to this bill, and B, that we constantly need to pass laws so that judges get the training that they need to handle the cases coming before them.
Thank you for your question. It's a very important question. So far, we have received extremely positive feedback on this bill. Today, I will be debating it in the House of Commons at around 1:15. We have received from advocacy groups, personal emails to all of our emails, concerns, questions, and finally that gratitude that there's acknowledgement of this very important issue. I always stay positive about everything, and with all the support it seems like we're getting from different parties and people across Canada, I have a very good feeling. Sure.
I just wanted to add as well that the bill has not only support from all MPs, but Jennifer and Philip met with a number of senators when the Judges Act was going through the Senate. It was actually debated, and there was broad support for domestic violence and coercive control being included in that bill, but they were concerned that if they sent the bill back to the House of Commons, it wouldn't get passed. So this bill does have support in the House of Commons, but it also had support from the Senate. So I think we're all very confident that with a lot of hard work and a little bit of good luck, and with Keira as our angel, that we'll be able to get this passed.
Thank you. I'm also wondering if Jennifer and Philip, you could speak to what else needs to be done. I mean, in your case, it wasn't just the court that failed your family. What else needs to be done to protect families and children?
I could try to answer that. It's more complicated of an answer, but there is a systemic problem. Children's Aid Society workers, for example, need the proper training. Quite frankly, family law lawyers who are in many cases the first point of contact of victims need that training to be able to identify abuse and understand especially trauma responses of victims. There are going to be a lot of changes that need to take place But the very first step is to at least get a culture shift within the judiciary, because they are the gatekeeper. They're the final person that are meant to protect victims and children. So this is at a minimum the first step.
Mia, do you have another question?
Just one quick one. Was there any request or consideration to ask the government to make this a government bill so it would move faster?
Sure. I'll hand it over to Yara.
Thank you for the question. So there was actually one person I did forget to thank in my opening remarks. Early on in the presentation of this bill, in addition to the wonderful work done by Minister Lametti's team, Minister Marcy Ian, who's our Minister of Gender, Youth and Equality, took this under her wing. She understood the value and importance of this legislation at this time, and really was one of our strongest advocates amongst members of Cabinet to make sure that deep consideration would be put forward on this bill.
And this concludes the press conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the conference, Jennifer and Phil. Thank you. We'll see you virtually from the House of Commons.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Thank you.